everyone, so today I'm going to talk you through writing your personal statement. In this session we're going to cover how to get started, how to structure your personal statement, what to include, the do's and don'ts, looking at 3 examples and what to do when you think you have finished. So writing your personal statement can seem quite daunting and lots of students ask, how do I actually start? So firstly, you must decide on what subject you're applying for, what course you're going to pursue. So this is important because there's no point starting a personal statement if you don't know the subject area. And that might sound really obvious, but some people have maybe 2 or 3 different subjects that they're considering. And they think that maybe because they're sounding kind of similar, that their personal statements, don't need to be so unique. But actually they do need to be really, really unique and really tailored to the course that you want to do. So in order to help you figure out what subject you want to apply for, I recommend looking at the UCAS website, the Unifrog website, and the Complete University Guide site. So I've put links to each of these on the pictures on the right-hand side. So just have a click and have a little look through those. Unifrog in particular is really, really good. I think it also has a quiz to help you figure out what type of student you are as well, which is really useful. But it's got so much detail on all the different types of programs that you can do. Also thinking about programs like, say, for example, English literature. English literature will not be the same at each university. Some students have this conception that English literature, you'll study the same thing, the same texts at each university, and that's just not the case. So it's also important that once you've figured out what subject area that you want to do, that you also look into what is covered at each university or the types of universities that you're considering to make sure that it sounds good to you. Once you've done that, once you've figured out what subject area or field of study you want to pursue, make a list of the relevant experiences and skills that you have gained and developed. Try to keep it relevant in terms of the subject that you're doing, but also try to keep it contemporary. So we don't really want to know about some work experience you did in Year 9 or you helping out at an open evening in Year 8, because obviously that's quite old. We want things that are from the last 2 years really. Once you've done that, then make a list of the reasons why you want to study this subject. Students surprisingly find this quite difficult because sometimes it is quite hard to articulate why you want to study a subject. Sometimes it is just because you purely just enjoy it, you enjoy the lessons, you enjoy the content. But really you need to start delving deeper and thinking about what is it specifically that you enjoy. Is it one particular area of that subject? Is it a book that you read? Is it a concept or an idea that you studied that really sparked your imagination? So make a list of all those reasons. And finally, do not start at the beginning. Often students try to come up with that really great first opening sentence. Usually they'll find some sort of quote from the internet or from a famous person and they start there. Don't agonise over that first sentence just yet. Just leave that for now and focus on the main content and main body of your statement and come back to that later. I often say that to my students in terms of writing an essay. Sometimes, if you're writing a really long essay, you might do the introduction last and the conclusion last. It's the same applies here. You want to maybe come back to the start later. It's best just to get on with the main body of the personal statement. So how do you structure your statement? So really, you want to do it roughly in this order. So firstly, talk about your reason for wanting to study the course. Then a section on independent research and reading that you have done. Note there that I've put wider reading, so not talking about things that you've read within your A-level programme, something you've done beyond that. Course-related academic activities, and then finally extracurricular activities. Now the weighting for each of these topics or sections, I would say you want perhaps the most or the main body to be on the second and third section. So what are those things that you have done, that you have read, that are related to the subject, that exemplify why you are suitable and why you are interested in that course? The extracurricular activities is the least important in terms of how much you have to write about. You might only include maybe 2 or 3 lines on this because really, although extracurricular activities are important and they show who you are as a person, they are perhaps the least important in showing why you are academically suitable for a course. but it is still important to include. It just requires less lines. So what to include for each of these sections? So this is a little bit more guidance, some clues about what you could use here. So firstly, your reasons for wanting to study the course. So it might be a particular issue or problem or example that interested you that you want to talk about. Or it might be something that you have witnessed yourself or experienced yourself. It might be in your personal life, or it might be something you saw in work experience or voluntary work that led you to pursue this field of study. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that in a moment. So the independent research and wider reading section, really you're looking at books and journals mostly. Just make sure that the books that you talk about or discuss are not books that you have read as part of your A-level. So again, if you're doing English literature, don't talk about a poem or a book that you read as part of your A-level or your GCSE, because really the academic tutors are looking to see that you are broadening your reading beyond the curriculum. You might make parallels back to something you read in your A-levels, but really it's good to show breadth of reading here. For journal articles, we've got JSTOR. So JSTOR is it's almost like a search engine where you can find lots of different academic journals from different places. If you've not used JSTOR before, the academic tutors can give you some tips and guidance on how to do that. Really, it is quite overwhelming because there is so much there. So really you need to have in your mind, I guess, something quite specific that you're looking for. If I was just to type in Marxism into the search engine, tons of stuff will come up from all kinds of disciplines, not necessarily something that I need or want. So you will have to maybe get a bit more guidance on how to use JSTOR from the academic tutors if you've not done that already. You might want to discuss a particular problem or topic or theme you have found interesting from your reading. You could critically evaluate the topic or theme, or you could apply that idea to a contemporary issue that's happening right now. It's really important not just to describe what you've read. If you're, for example, applying for philosophy and you've read an original text from a philosopher, the likelihood is that the academics at the university will have also read that text. So you don't really need to describe to them what you've read and what it means. You need to come up with some sort of analysis. You know, is there a particular thing that you agree with or disagree with that the writer has demonstrated, or is it that actually something they've said really resonates with something that's happened today, even though it was written hundreds of years ago? So that's kind of how you approach writing about books and journal articles. So you want to describe, you don't want to describe, you want to analyse or evaluate. Then your next section is course-related academic activities. So this can be lectures and seminars that you've attended. We obviously had the Insights lecture series at school. So if you've not been to one of those, you might want to consider going to some or listening to some at the start of this academic year. There are also lots of lectures and seminars that are recorded online. You can usually find them through the university's websites. So don't worry if you haven't been to any yet, there is still time to watch and learn. If you went to any summer school programs or university taster courses, I know some of you went on university taster courses, and again, it's exactly the same as the previous section. Don't just tell us what happened on the taster course. Tell us what you learned from it, or something you gained, or something that was interesting and thought-provoking, and why. Any competitions that you've entered, so you might have entered a writing competition, an essay competition, it might have been an engineering competition, something that shows that you are going, again, beyond the curriculum and you're trying to find new experiences. And also, if you've done the extended project qualification, you might want to talk about that here as well. Usually people that have done an EPQ have picked a topic that they want to study at university. And obviously, just by doing the EPQ, you're showing lots of university-related skills such as independent study and research. But you might want to talk in depth a little bit more about a particular part of your EPQ that was interesting. And finally, extracurricular activities. So this could include paid or voluntary work, the Duke of Edinburgh Award or the National Citizen Service, any clubs or societies that you're a member of, and any competitions that you have been part of or won or placed in. Again, this is not a large section of your personal statement. But as I said before with the other sections, it's important not just to describe or list things you have done, it's important to say what you gained from them. So what skills did you gain from doing all of these things, and how does that relate to university? So next we've got the do's and don'ts of your personal statement. So along with the do's, we've got support statements with evidence. So don't just say, I'm really good at X. You want a piece of evidence to show why you're good at that particular skill. Use simple and direct language. So this is not a vocabulary test. It's better to say something simply and directly and concisely rather than using elaborate language that perhaps might end up wasting precious characters and lines. Write about lectures, seminars, work experience, widening participation schemes, webinars. These are all good things to talk about, as we discussed before. And always try to analyse rather than describe. I know I've said that a few times now, but it's really, really important because often we do just end up with lists of achievements or experiences rather than saying something about them. So things that you should try to avoid. So try to avoid cliches. A common one is saying that you've wanted to do a particular program ever since you were a child or ever since you were born. It's unlikely that you wanted to be a radiologist or a lawyer since you were born or a child. It's an exaggeration, and a lot of students write it, and it is considered perhaps a cliche. You might not know if something's a cliche, so when you take your personal statements to your perhaps subject teachers or your form tutors, don't be upset if they tell you something's a cliche. They're only telling you because obviously they've read so many, so they can spot these for you. Copying and sharing. So this one's really, really important. Plagiarism is obviously taken extremely seriously at university, and there are severe consequences if you plagiarise. So the same is for your application. We can't start university life with plagiarising our applications. So make sure that if you're doing lots of research about how to write a personal statement and you're reading lots of examples, that you don't accidentally copy and paste something from a website, because it will show up. There is some computer software that UCAS uses to make sure that there is no similarities with other applications, both in the current cycle and in previous years. Also, I've put there sharing. You might try to be a good Samaritan and share your personal statement with friends or colleagues, but make sure that you try not to do that, because you can't always trust that somebody will be as honest as you, and they might try to plagiarise some of your work. So just be really careful. Don't share your personal statement with other people, so that they don't end up using your work accidentally or otherwise. Don't mention a specific university. So you're applying to more than one university. So if you start talking about your desire to go to Loughborough University, all the other universities will be deeply offended. So just make sure that you are being perhaps more general and talking about the course, not the particular university. You can talk about wanting to go to university life more broadly if you need to, but you don't need to mention names or specifics. So list a series of experiences and skills without saying anything about them. So again, reiterate once more, don't just list qualifications or list experiences. You've got to say what you gained from them or what was interesting about them. Just on that note as well, it's important not to, don't list that you've done particular A-levels. Don't say, I have completed A-level, science, politics, whatever, because that's also in a separate section of your application. So you don't need to repeat that information. That will be elsewhere on the application. So we've got a couple of examples now on how to open your statements. These are two candidates for the Natural Sciences programme. So just have a quick read of candidate A, and then have a quick read of candidate B. And think about what is it about candidate B's introductory paragraph that is perhaps a bit stronger. So you might want to just pause the video here so you can have a quick read of those. Okay, so you'll notice with candidate B that it's much more specific than candidate A. So they're talking about specific areas of physics and biology that they enjoy, and things that they have perhaps researched on or developed an understanding of. whereas candidate A, it's much more broad, and they use cliches. For example, that classic one about since I was a child, really, I'm not sure since they were a child they were fascinated by science. They may have done, but it is often something students write, and it isn't the best approach to writing a statement. And the second part, they talk about, glancing around their living room, my eyes fall upon a whole host of fascinating organisms. Again, it's just a cliche, and it's unlikely that that's really the case. It's much better to do what candidate B's done and talk about something really specific. And I imagine that if I was reading candidate B's personal statement, they would go on to talk about perhaps a book they've read on quantum models later on. So I know that they're going to be really academic in their approach to their statement. So the second example is a law candidate. So again, if you want to just pause the video and think about why candidate B has a slightly better approach than candidate A. Okay, so candidate A again has made use of cliches. That sentence there about law being a glue that holds society together, that's a sentence that students use for a whole range of different subject areas, so one to avoid. Also, I do question, are they really fascinated by all aspects of human rights law? Human rights law is obviously a very broad area. It's unlikely that they love all of it. They might not even know about all of it just yet. So try to avoid those kind of cliches. Candidate B, just by glancing at the text straight on, you can see that candidate B is more detailed. But what's good is that they're more detailed about a specific case that they have researched. And that's a much better approach because it shows that they've done some additional research. And it shows that they're looking at the subtle differences between the cases, which is really interesting. That's something that a good law student wants to demonstrate, that attention to detail. The third example is on extracurricular activities, because sometimes students really struggle to talk about their extracurricular activities in a really sort of concise manner. So here's an example on the left of a student that's kind of just listed all of the things they've done. They haven't really told us what they've gained from any of these experiences, and they've listed some that I would say perhaps I wouldn't necessarily include. For example, that one there about something that they did in year 11. It depends what it is, but I would say that perhaps I wouldn't include that because it's not that standout. It's not a standout achievement necessarily. Also, working as a school prefect, it is really good. But again, what did you gain from that? How does your experience as a school prefect then translate to university and the skills that you need for university? So you can see for candidate B that they have been way more specific about what they've gained from it. And also you can see that they're much more concise. So it's much better because they're not wasting so many characters and lines on their extracurricular activities. And so therefore, they've got more space to talk about their academic achievements. So what to do once you're finished? So I've put finished in inverted commas there because often students say, I'm finished, I've done with my personal statement, I'm ready to send it off, and they're really, really not. Okay, so what you need to do is the following. So firstly, you need to think about the fact that the personal statement writing is a lengthy process for everyone. If you've done your personal statement in 1 or 2 days, it's unlikely to be the finished product. It's not a process that you can rush. So expect to complete multiple drafts, and this isn't something that only the best students do or the worst students do. Everyone has to complete lots and lots of drafts, and they get multiple people to read their drafts. So if you've done maybe 2 or 3 drafts, that's great. Expect to do maybe 5 or 6 drafts, and really draft until we're all happy with it and we're confident that you've got something of quality. So that being said, make sure you leave lots of time. Don't leave it to the deadline because there will be so much stuff happening towards the UCAS deadline you might not have time to actually get staff to read it. So make sure you're completing drafts early and you're getting staff to check it early. Obviously check your spelling and grammar. It's surprising the amount of students that will leave obvious spelling and grammatical mistakes. Don't rely on Microsoft Word to do it for you. Obviously start there, get Microsoft Word to check it for you, but then check it yourself, because obviously sometimes it will correct words to something completely different that you didn't want. So make sure you're reading through it and manually checking the spelling and grammar yourself. That being said, also make sure that you're checking your spelling and grammar on the other parts of your application. So when you're filling out your name, your address, making sure you're capitalising street names, your own name, and the postcode. All of this is really important because you're giving an impression to the admissions officers and the academic tutors at the university. Once you've written a first draft, make sure you get a subject specialist to read it, especially if you're talking about something you've read in an article, like a journal article or a book. You want to make sure you've got the correct perhaps translation or the correct understanding of the topic. Make sure that your actual subject knowledge is strong. And your subject specialist, your teacher, can obviously give you a bit more guidance on how to perhaps improve it or take it further that perhaps your form tutor may not. Then once you've got the subject specifics down, you might want to ask your form tutor or academic tutor to read it. Your form tutors will have experience of reading personal statements, and certainly our academic tutors have lots of experience of supporting students with their statements, so they can help you to tidy it up, make it more concise, and see if there are any other areas that need development. Take on board constructive feedback and redraft your statement. This is so important. The amount of times we've given feedback to students and they don't take on board the comments we're making, it's very frustrating because it's not meant to be a criticism of you. It really is just feedback to make sure that you're improving. So if you ignore comments from your teachers and your tutors, it's likely that they're going to just give you the same feedback again and again for each draft. So make sure that you're changing your statement as per the feedback that you're given. If you're not sure how to change it and it's not clear, then just ask. And lastly, ensure it fits with the UCAS rules of no more than 47 lines and 4,000 characters. Sometimes when you type it up on Microsoft Word and copy and paste it into UCAS, it still doesn't fit. So make sure that you stay within the character and lines limit, but make sure that, again, you paste it into the UCAS system and check it there too. If you're struggling to make it concise, again, you can consult your form tutor and the academic tutors in the study area, but try to obviously look for areas where you can perhaps be more concise and really narrow it down. That's all. If you have any questions, then you can pop over and see me or ask anybody in the sixth form team and we'll be able to help you. Good luck, and I hope you get some really great offers. Take care.